Good afternoon. Thanks for joining again. I'm Bill Quinn, and I am joined by Sheila Holmes. Sheila, as always, thank you so much for making time to be with us this week. And I can't wait to hear your impressions of the last few days.
It's been amazing. And I'm sorry about last week because I was in Georgia, but I was in Rome, Georgia. The third time the president went to Rome. Why is he picking Rome three
I
times?
don't know. Isn't that interesting?
Isn't that
Rome.
interesting? But I haven't covered that. If you'd like to cover that or any pictures from that, that was quite a day. And the steel industry has real meaning to me. And so if you want to get into that, we can.
Okay, we can. Give me just a moment. I'm going to do something on another page. And all right. So I can't wait to hear about the Rome trip. Here is a post that you put up. It's very interesting. You and I happened to be in communication, and on RSBN, in that upper right corner, you can see a picture that I was able to capture from RSBN, and there you are. And tell us about what you experienced when you were in the crowd there and getting ready to go see the president, please.
Well, what was amazing is when you sent me that, I don't think you knew that I took the one while it was going on. It was right in front of me.
I didn't. Isn't
and
that?
So after you sent me yours, I tried to send you mine, but Wi-Fi would not work inside. I was without Wi-Fi from 10 in the morning until 6 in the evening. It was a long day in the heat in a steel building with everything closed. It was quite a day. The picture down at the bottom was one of the stellar moments to me. That's when he brought Herschel Walker up. And I think the guy, if you give me the name, is he the quarterback from Georgia team?
Yes. Gunner Stockton.
And he brought him up, and then he said he didn't really have anything to say. And then Herschel introduced him and talked about him. They were sitting together. And so the president, when he brought Herschel up, brought him up too. And then, but the president knew his name. The president knew his stats. The president knew about the dogs. And then, is it Jones that's running for governor? That's
Burt from Jones. That's correct.
Alabama.
Well,
somebody was from Alabama, and they said, I think we should say Roll Tide too. And everybody booed.
Jones said that, but he's actually, I believe, is a UGA grad. So I'm not quite sure. I think he was trying to curry some favor, perhaps.
No, I don't know. I don't know what was going on, but
I'm not sure if that's the right crowd to do that in.
No, it wasn't. Herschel Walker was so amazing. He took the elbow of the president and turned to him, and he said, Americans need to know. He introduced himself to me back in 1983. The man you see today is the same man who went out of his way to introduce himself to me in 1983. And we've been friends ever since.
How interesting.
Everybody, they stood up and cheered. Nobody wanted to sit down. And we were in the standing row right behind to be able to take pictures. And all these people seated, a lot of disabilities, a lot of veterans, a lot of, I mean, it was packed house. And so when all of this was going on, what was so profound is that we met the family. We met the investors. The president knew all the details, of course, of the negotiation. And this steel plant had not been able to give their workers more than a couple hours here and 4 hours there. And the president was giving all the details. And so as he gave those details, the negotiation he just made, they're going to be 724, and they can't even take on any new contracts until after the end of July.
Wow.
We're in February. And they can't even take on any. That's how fast what the president did in this negotiation made that happen.
Now, in previous conversations, you've explained that they were barely hanging on, barely able to keep people employed, even part-time, for quite some time. And yet they've lasted and survived to now. And all of a sudden, things are beginning to look very bright for the steel company's future and others.
Well, and it's like a 4 or 5 generation company. I mean, it's long standing in the area. Just amazing. And it was funny because I got the invitation, as you know, late on Wednesday. And then I thought, I'm tired and I got a lot to do. I don't think I should go. And so I wasn't going to go. even though I got approved within like 3 minutes. When I went on, it went right to the White House, and Secret Service looked at it. And then I got there, and the Secret Service guys were from Mar-a-Lago. And, you know, I've been to Mar-a-Lago a lot in the past few months. And I said, I think I know you from Mar-a-Lago. And he goes, yes, ma'am, you do. And I know you too. And I got in with the Magador bag from Juan and Jen. And I got in with the Magador jacket, and I got in with my 2 bottles of ketones and my little Trump water bottle to drink, have water to drink. And I got in with a book that I could autograph for the president if they said it was okay. And they took care of all of that. So I got to see it handed to the president, and all this stuff was happening. And everybody's like, I had to give up my water, and I had to give up this, and I had to give up that, and I had to take all this back to my car. And you come in with this whole bag of all this stuff. You know what I mean? It was so funny. They said you had to come in with a transparent plastic bag. I didn't have a transparent plastic bag, but I asked the guys, I said, if this is inappropriate, I don't want to be inappropriate. I want to do what's right. And they said, just give us the bag. You know what I mean? Because I was, they said, just give us the bag. And Secret Service just kind of put their fingers through it and said, take your bag. And I'm like, okay, because they know that I've been, you know, anyway.
It reminds
really
me,
amazing.
It reminds me of it reminds me of Juan's movie, Makings of a Perfect Day, when he arrives ostensibly in Washington to provide President Trump a bag of goodies assembled from people all across the country. Do you remember that? And that's
what one a hatchet or something.
All kinds of things, jelly and a book and a shirt.
Peach preserves, macadamia nuts.
That's exactly right. You do remember. How wonderful!
Oh, I remember that movie. Really, that movie.
I was sorry that RSBN's Robert McNeely didn't have a chance to say hello to you. He was talking with that gentleman when we showed the picture just a moment ago, and I was hoping that he would spot you just behind him. You were standing right there, and especially with the Magador jacket over your arm or whatnot, and be able to chat with you, because I thought that would have been a fascinating conversation. But maybe next time. So,
well,
Robert,
the woman with the blue shirt and the red hat, they were handing out red hats from Gooch. There's a guy named Gooch that's running for office. They gave out free hats. She had big posters that were beautifully done. She purchased letters, she said, and, you know, I love you, Trump, and all that kind of stuff. And so she had those holding up. So they used those. So anybody that was watching RSBN, they went right from him, walked around us, and went to her and did the, because she had those beautiful posters. I got to meet her. We went to dinner together that night.
But you have beautiful insight, so that's just as important. So maybe next time.
Yeah, maybe.
One of the things that I found very interesting as he went through the crowd were young ladies from Iran, and as you may know, the regime in Iran seems to be very dark, very, I'll call them just bad people, a lot of them, and they are not good to their people. You'll recall that President Trump asserted that they should not harm their own people, and if they did, there'd be, I think he said, hell to pay. The people, on the other hand, are much like a lot of other people, many people, perhaps most people in the world. They want the same things largely that we do. They want freedom. They want the opportunity for safety for their families. They want the opportunity for success for their families, and they're pleading for that, and very, I think, in many cases, very happy to have Trump and America's attention to try to help them. Now, what that takes, I'm not sure we know as we sit here, but they seemed quite thankful and really excited to be there in support, very frankly, of Trump and what he's doing here. We seem to be the example, if you will, as you would expect, for the rest of the world. What do you think?
All the nations are taking example, just like he said the template of Minnesota is going to be the template we're going to follow. He's setting the example for every phase of everything we're coming through.
Yeah. So you got a chance to see him. What were your thoughts on what he spoke about? Were there I don't know, hints in there? Were there surprises? What did you find?
Well, when he was in Rome, he gave even more of coming. And you know, when President Jefferson said that you can't just replace an evil in a republic, you have to just. And when he explained it, because it's only a couple of months ago when he said, my goodness, he said, do you know that we have less crime now than we had 100 years ago? And people were like, whoa. And when he was in Georgia, he said, less crime than 125 years ago. I really think what he's revealing to us is we're getting closer and closer to being at a point where we've got it under control. Because there's more things than just the illegals coming in. There's all of these people who've come in with visas who are still here. And they may not be, horrible criminals, but they shouldn't be here. So when I did we talked about when I was there for the swearing in, how they had all these undocumented, they don't even have a green card, undocumented people that they still have the files of. Why do they have the files? Why aren't those people back home and then get a green card? I mean, why aren't they turning them in? And then when they said, put the names you want on there and pick your first name, your middle name, and your last name, and then you have to stay with that first name. Why wasn't that already on the certificate? I was so blown away. But since we've been on together, and I just heard this on Monday, and it's true. Did you know that if your friend has a green card, they've been able to get a green card, did you know that they can turn that in at the post office with the passport information and get an American passport as though they're a citizen?
No.
One of the hosts on Monday night show, it was a live show, and he told me that his wife is from the Philippines, and they heard that, but they're putting her through for the naturalized citizen because he's a military guy. He wants her crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's, making sure everything is done right.
Yeah, as you would
hope.
And
so he heard this and he thought, well, that just must be their post office. I mean, but we've got to find out, is it just their post office? So he went in with his wife and she agreed to show him the green card. And he said, so what is this deal? I'm hearing that people can just turn in a green card. He said, yes, we turn in the green card with your passport application, and then you will get an American passport.
Oh boy.
We got a problem.
Yeah, that's another gap that's been found, isn't it?
I've sent it up the chain. I'm finding all these, but God wants it cleaned up, And so I'm sending it to the right people, and I volunteered to do whatever I have to do to help, because if we don't have this cleaned up, and that's why what they're saying is, well, they've got to have a national ID in order. If they come with a passport, they're going to be allowed to vote, and they're not a citizen yet.
Yeah. Yep.
And the thing that's really crazy about this, it's way beyond, I've been talking about the driver's licenses that are real IDs in California. They have the same watermark, and all they did was bring in one address to mail the driver's license to, and right on the driver's license application, they click that they want to register to vote. Nobody should be doing that through DMV when they're not the voter registration office. It's just,
that's
you
right.
just get
Actually,
the name in the system, and that's it.
Here in Georgia, when you go to get your driver's license, it defaults to registering you to vote. You have to click, please don't do that.
Yes.
And I think I reported, perhaps on one of our previous visits, that I watched as I renewed my own driver's license last year. I watched as someone came into the line, was in line in front of me with a helper. The helper was there to speak English and had a file of various types of documents, and to help this person get through the license registration process. Was that proper, improper? No way to tell, because nobody can see it except the person taking the application.
There I was at the swearing in of the naturalized citizens, and you know what they asked? Now, does anyone need all the rules in another language?
Oh boy.
And it's the day that they're being sworn in.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, a wonderful day. I was so pleased to see you there. I was just tickled. As soon as I learned that you were there, I got on RSBN and was hoping to see you. And the first thing was there you were. So fascinating. And thank you for sharing the experiences while you were there. It seemed to be a relatively small crowd compared to, people think of his rallies as quite large. And this was what, maybe a few hundred people, maybe 1,000? What do you think?
The room itself didn't hold more than 500, but it was packed. I don't think it held more than 500. I didn't count the chairs because the chairs were slammed together, and every space had, that because there's a lot of people walking with canes and wheelchair. I mean, and coming in on motorized wheelchairs that are disabled and et cetera. And it's funny because a lot of people, two women were standing there and they said, we decided to bring mom in today because that puts us at the front of the line and gets us all in chairs.
Oh,
I'm like,
goodness.
why would you, unless somebody really wants to do that? But when you saw all of that happening, and those pictures were right as we went in to do the checkpoint and go through all the security stuff. Yeah. So that was right at that point. And I'd been there from the very beginning. And so I was way up in the front of the line. But it's because I got there early. Guy got me through traffic in Atlanta without a slowdown.
Wow.
At 9:30 in the morning, which is impossible in Atlanta. I always avoid Atlanta.
That's a miracle in and of itself, isn't it?
I never slowed down.
I'll be darned.
Unbelievable. Well, but did I tell you what God did about the iron ore? I mean, by getting the steel industry back, let's think about this a minute. Remember how many times we heard we're never getting the steel industry back. We're never going to have it back.
And all the reasons why the politicians said,
I'm bringing
manufacturing
manufacturing back, and here we go. And that steel industry, you said it, they never gave up. They could have given up. Yeah. But the people in the area are so excited, and they didn't have to go look for other employees. All their employees came back.
Well, what is Trump always famous for saying? Never, ever, ever give up. And a great example in the real world. So the other fascinating event this week was, of course, the State of the Union address, very much anticipated. How long was it, just out of interest? I think you mentioned
107 minutes.
107 minutes.
The gavel hit at 108.
And zero is a throwaway, so 17. Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Longest ever.
And then Dan Scavino had posted a video that happened to be 17 seconds long. I think either the same night or the night after. So
what was that one on?
It's a night picture of the Capitol, I believe. I believe it was an exterior picture, video of the Capitol.
Did you see his 5 seconds today?
No, what is it?
A B2.
Oh, really?
Do you think that's a notice to Iran?
I don't know. There's been all kinds of very interesting posts. The White House posted a picture of President Trump with under an umbrella with a red light behind him that I found very interesting. Sort of an inexplicable setting. Where would you have gotten this, and perhaps why? But there it is. So what were your impressions of the State of the Union, if you could share?
I think we're in a miraculous place. He made a point. I stopped counting how many times he set them up. Because people thought, a lot of people didn't come. There were a lot of empty chairs, and they thought, they were saving themselves from being called out. What they don't understand is, if you don't come, that's against a title in the law per our Constitution. They have to go to this event because the government shut down. They probably thought they don't have to go. But the president said, even when the government shut down, I'm going to be there. That's right. Because he did it, and because because they're supposed to be representing us. But I don't know if people saw, I was watching the people on the camera. And when they got the guy that was leaning over to the side, and he was just leaning over like this, that guy didn't just lean over and keep his eyes closed and just, doesn't care what's even being said. He was wearing a pin. And you know how the president did that pin to troll Canada when he went to the NATO meeting up in Canada? Yeah. And they had the American flag, they're little on one side, and the Canadian flag on the other. This guy had the American flag and the Ukrainian flag.
Oh, that's right. I did remember saying that. Isn't that terrible?
But what a slam against us. And then the president announces that they're still they're still losing 25,000 Ukrainians a month because they won't stop the fight.
Right. And in lots of cases, they're actually abducting some or most of those people from the streets of Ukraine because they don't have an army left. And so they'll take people right off the street. We've shown videos of mothers, sisters, daughters, sons, trying to hang on to their dad or their uncle or their brother and keep them from being dragged into a van. And if they can't keep them from being dragged away, the van door shuts, they drive away, and that's probably the last they see of that person.
Well, because they were putting teenagers in the front line, and but President Trump has been talking about this, but there's still, he announced it during the State of the Union, 25,000 a month. How's that even feasible? You know,
they're fighting a battle that cannot be won. Obviously, it's horrific. As you said, there were a number of very interesting reactions, especially from the left. You know, he took a direct shot at Pelosi about insider trading and other things, but insider trading. And she starts literally chewing on her dentures, which is just a very bad look, I guess is the way to put it.
Well, and I was trying to think of the guy about the insider trading. They held the camera on him, and he just kept looking off to the side like this and trying to act like he wasn't even there. Do you know what I mean?
Like he didn't hear it.
Yeah.
And then they had Ilhan Omar and the other one next to her. Yes, that began just shouting at him when he's challenging him about, why are they not letting us get these illegal criminals out of the country? They're harming our people. And they started shouting things back, and he ended up saying, you should be ashamed of yourselves. And we're at that point where they are showing themselves for who they are. I reported it on a different cast last night, and I could not help myself but say, you know why that's inappropriate? Say her name, Laken Riley, who was killed here in Georgia by an illegal alien. And that's the price that's being paid, by innocence. And yet they seem to want it to continue.
He made it clear with the examples. I did not know that the male National Guard, the female did die. We heard both died, and he was there. And so he survived. And I did not know that happened. And then the little girl, I did hear about the little girl that the foreign national illegal alien drove over with the 18-wheeler, and he didn't qualify, couldn't speak English to get a license, and illegally had a license to drive an 18-wheeler, and he drove over her, and I guess he didn't stop her. Driving over with, I mean, those are double tires, guys. I mean, it's just unbelievable what he did. And there she was, and she still has some difficulty walking, but God's bringing her back. I mean, and they wouldn't even stand. So then when he said, the job of the government is to do all you can to protect the American citizens, and the Americans, not the illegals. And they didn't even react to that. And so then he said, I want you to stand. If you stand for the Americans versus the illegals, and they wouldn't stand. And then he also said, you should be ashamed of yourselves. You just, because he had to point it out. People have been saying it was all drama. It wasn't drama. If the truth is not in you, and that's the Lord over all, Aleph, the picture that is on, that he put his signature on the map, on the eclipses, that's his signature. He did that in 7 years. And so when he did that, he was revealing to us he's with us. And if he's not with you, he is truth and life. Without him is only death. We've talked about this before. So without him, without truth, the only way you end up with a reprobate mind, which means you can't even answer any different. You just have to mimic or repeat what other people tell you. That's where these people are. If truth is not in your mind, that is a reprobate mind. The truth is no longer in it. And that's where we are with these people. And I think this is the very first time they've been revealed so drastically in front of the public. And I don't think it was for drama purposes. I don't think Elon and Talib want to say anything else other than to scream at the president like that.
I don't think they can do anything else. What can they do to try to justify a different position? There is nothing. There was another case where somebody was trying to get an answer from one of them on one of the issues, and they simply wouldn't respond. They just run down the hallway, not answering the question. And we're seeing a lot of that recently. A lot of cases where when they realize they have no answer, so they won't say anything. They try to look glibly off into the distance, like, "Oh, I'm not hearing anything. I'm sorry, I've gone deaf," and they pretend they can't hear the question. Um, the other thing that I found fascinating was the fact that he recognized so strongly the American hockey team, and is going to give the highest civilian honor in the land to their goalkeeper, but only after the team voted to have that happen. So it was a combination of him wishing it to happen, but also he wanted to get the input from the team before doing it. That's kind of, I read that as very much the president's modus operandi in many things. He wants concurrence. He wants us to know what's being done prior to taking action so that he can discern agreement, can discern buy-in into his plans. Do you feel that way when he's talking about some of these things that might happen?
Well, because he's not an arbitrary dictator kind of guy to just, this is how I'm going to choose it, and I'm only choosing this guy because there wasn't a single person that came up with another name. Not a single person on that team. They all said, that's the guy.
Yeah.
And Cash Patel involvement with him was amazing. Just amazing.
That's true. I don't have the clip of that, but people will find pictures of Cash Patel in the locker room in one of the jerseys, drinking a beer as fast as he could guzzle it with the team. I hope they're of age. Maybe in
they are. A lot of these are already Stanley Cup winners. I mean, these are well-seasoned hockey players.
That's true. The White House posted this picture, and I found it particularly well-timed given everything we're seeing, not just with the State of the Union, not just with the things going on in the country, but of course the horrific things coming out revolving around the Epstein files, and the fact that he has proposed and is planning on having a rededication of the country on May 17th. In much the same way that you've described many times, the Pilgrims dedicated the nation to God even before landing. And so I found this a very timely picture for the White House to post. And this shows, I think, part of the hockey team just above the clock there in this picture, but more importantly,
and then he had him walk in the aisles and come into the chamber and be there.
That's right.
And they didn't even stand for them. I mean, it's just, they're not standing for us at all.
That's right. And to your point earlier, they take an oath to support the country. And that was one of the other posts that you made that I found very, very interesting. It's an oath, or appears to be an oath, taken by judges. And you put this up in X, and I wanted to get your thoughts on how do we interpret what this is showing us? It seems to be a combination of several things, but we have found cases here in Georgia where when we ask for people's oaths that are currently in office, seems difficult to come up with them, and for inexplicable reasons in some cases.
Well, these were pulled through FOIA requests. A woman started sending me a bunch of these, Ron DeSantis, Pam Bondi, some Congress members, House and Senate, and she just started sending them, and I don't have an answer yet. She said they're defective. And I said the defect, and that's all I asked. You tell me, is the defect what they're circling and saying no? Because what I know the letters are so small, I get it. So, but what they've circled and put no behind is "so help me God." And then refusal for cause. What does that tell you?
I don't know. Well, we don't know who wrote that on the document,
and we don't know if it was on, because this is different printing than the other ones, but the other ones are pretty similar. So did they all do it in a meeting? Did they all use the same pen? Because this is a FOIA response to a FOIA request as to, what do you mean these people didn't take an oath? So they were getting the documents about taking an oath. And she said they're all defective. And the only way they would be defective is by, once you sign it, you refuse for cause. And it's because you have to take an oath, so help me God. If they're not aligned with the Father that our whole nation is based upon. That's why our first congressional session was on December 25. They knew that the highest holy satanic days of the entire year, the 13, are from December 24 to January 6. That's why they have all of us focus on the 12 days of Christmas, and none of it
That's right.
has to do with Christ. We've talked about that already, but they're not operating with the Father. Don't want anything to do with him, and are not going to take. That's what. And you see the skull and bones signal on the symbol on this. That 322. That's when they erected the Georgia Guidestones, because 322 is when Lucifer said that we were cursed from the garden, and this land that we think we're on, we're to die because this is not our land. Who do we think we are coming here on their land? Because we were cursed from the garden, and only Satan's people get to be on this land. And they do truly believe this. If you want to live, forever, and because remember, they're coming believing that they are becoming living gods. Okay. To become a living God is what the Theosophical Society merging into eugenics, which is the mRNA, which is changing your DNA, that's why they're collecting all this DNA. It's not people who want to help you and find your family and et cetera. That's not what they're collecting it for. We have a particular unique because we came straight from the Father. And so we have not been corrupted until all this mRNA and the collection of DNA and what they're doing with it in the labs and then doing the bioweapon targeting. And so they're trying to change us from being the children of the living Lord, who is life and truth. And without him, there is no truth. That's why get rid of the Bible, get rid of the 10 Commandments. Let's not have any of that around. Let's get rid of this, get rid of that. They did all of that knowing the power in it. They knew if the Lord was over our lives that they can't do anything to us. That's what Kofefe is about. We will always rise. Can you imagine how mad they are? How many of us have lived through the genocide of 2020, 21, 22, and they're still having people sign up to take vaccines. And people are waiting in lines. People are registering in advance for an appointment time to come in and get the vaccine. That is now a combo of flu and COVID-19, and they know it when they sign.
Yeah.
They want us dead. That's all I can tell you. They want us dead. And
it's very interesting.
Doing this would make it defective. And I think that's what she's trying to tell me, but she hasn't answered. She just kept sending more of these. But this one, I didn't get any other. They had a judge's name on it. This was a judge, and then he was skull and bones to there. But so was George W., 43rd president, skull and bones. Clinton was skull and bones, wasn't he?
I don't know. I don't recall. Maybe. Skull and Bones is a secret society associated with Yale University. And also they, as one of their artifacts, they supposedly have the skull of Geronimo, the Indian, the famous Indian. Now, I have heard tales that the 322 refers to Genesis 322. Do you find that?
It is. That's what it is. That's when they felt that the Lord cursed us, because that's when what the Father says in Genesis 3:22. He says, now that they know good from evil. Remember, they covered themselves with fig leaves, not apple tree leaves. Just want to throw that one in there too. They covered themselves with fig leaves, and then Christ came along and condemned. And what did he say? He cursed. That's what he did. He cursed the fig tree. Thank you, Father. Didn't just condemn it, cursed it. And it withered, I think. But anyway, it was all about the fig trees. So they covered themselves with fig leaves. And Father said, now that they know good from evil, let's say reach out and eat of the tree of life and live forever. Then there's a long pause and the word Selah. And Adam and Eve were so embarrassed, they left the garden. And so Satan, Lucifer, people say they're different families. I don't care. They're on the same tree. They're above the same tree. They decided to tell the people that this isn't our land. We were cursed on this land, and that believers need to be killed. That's why the Civil War, believers were being killed. That's why all these believing men who will fight for a cause are people who believe in the living Lord. We have a different mindset. We want to help save people around the world. We want to help people be protected and safe and healthy. And we want all these things. They don't. Right. They want us dead.
And we want to do it within the guidance and the structures that the Father has provided, not try to create our own in defiance of the Father. And it's very interesting that some of the documents now being discovered from the Epstein releases have much to do with eugenics
Mm-hmm.
and seem to imply lengthening life to the point of immortality by transferring things to mechanical means, transferring, uploading intelligence, uploading consciousness. And there's a video of Jared Kushner about 3 years ago saying a very, very unusual quote. He said that he believes this is probably the last generation to actually die. After this, we'll have reached the ability to be essentially immortal. And I thought, what a strange thing for him to say. And I found it disconcerting because I couldn't make the distinction at that point between Jared Kushner and Trump. I thought, how is it possible that this is a gentleman tied to the Trump family? But we've learned to not make expectations now, haven't we?
Well, and to AI. I just had a host read to me on Monday AI, because I said that these presidents didn't qualify because their parents had to be Americans for them to be natural born. Do you know what AI says about our Constitution?
What's that?
That natural born means that they were born in America. So now people are saying Rubio was born in Miami so he can be president. I said, no, his parents are Cuban. They came here from Cuba and he was born in Miami. And that's an anchor baby. And that's what they did all around the world, is send people to go have a baby in other nations. And then when that child becomes 21, then they activate that child to control for that other nation that sent them. Do you see what I mean? So we've had all of that. I mean, Kamala didn't qualify. Jeb didn't qualify. George W. didn't qualify. George H.W. didn't qualify. Clinton is a question mark because he's a Rockefeller. Nobody knew that. Where is his father? Who is his father? And was he an American? Right. And was the mom here as an American? I mean, we don't know the details of these people.
Identities
and yet they get on the
themselves are in
ballot.
question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The what?
Yeah, identities themselves are in question. Look at Macron's wife. According to Candace, she may not even be a female, born a female.
No, I think the president's even mentioned that.
Yeah.
People know, you know what I mean? But it's always been allowed. It's always been, what's going on. Somebody just sent it to me and I didn't forward it, but it was back when Bill Murray still had brown hair and was real slender. It was in the early 1980s, and it's from Saturday Night Live. And this doctor was famous because he had something like 48,000 babies that he delivered, and they were all girls. And so the reporter was asking the question. I mean, that's like one chance in 700 trillion or something like that. Yeah. And he goes, it's just what happens. It's all I can say. So Bill Murray comes in with his wife and brings her in, and she's real close to delivering. And he said, doctor, we just want to know, is this one finally going to be a boy? And the reporter goes, like, how many daughters do you have? And he goes, 7 of them. And he said, if this one isn't, then my next one better be. And his wife said, there won't be a next one. This is it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So then he said, no, he said, you're gonna have a girl. And he said, well, is this girl going to need that surgery after? And so then the reporter goes, what's the surgery after? And then I think it's Bill Murray that says, well, that's when the doctor, that's when he says, well, we have to remove all those other parts. So they're removing all the male parts and reforming it. And he's naming the male parts they're removing. And this is in the 80s. I never, ever heard that. And back then I thought Bill Murray was really funny. And I relaxed and watched Saturday Night Live sometimes on Saturday night. I didn't realize how bad it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he's describing that. And so then he said the same surgery 5 of my other daughters had to have. And he said, yes. So the reporter's asking, he names the parts and then says, I have to do that. And then reform the parts.
Oh boy.
That was in the early 80s.
You mentioned something a few minutes ago. I wanted to get you to describe to people so they understand it. They've probably seen it before, but I want to make sure they get a chance. So this is the map that you mentioned earlier with the letter Aleph inscribed on it based on the tracks of 3 separate full eclipses that passed over the U.S. Tell us what we're looking at, if you could, please.
Well, in 2017, Father started the eclipse in Salem, and it went through 7 cities named Salem, which means peace, shalom. And that one went backwards because the sun goes from east to west. It went from west to east. And I said, God, I don't know why you're doing this. And he said, I have to reverse the curse. So then when the one happened in 23, that one swung up to Salem. And then the next one swung up from the Gulf up to Maine. And what happened in 22, I was in Branson, Missouri. It was November of 22. And when I was there, I was talking about this because they said about the X, you see the X that they thought was formed over Illinois?
Yes.
And they said, God is targeting America. This is the end, blah, blah, blah. You know, cicadas are going to come up from 200 years and they've been below ground. And this story stayed until the 24 made its path, and that the Mississippi is going to break. And that's all of the, I never realized this till I did the map. All of the state lines from the Gulf all the way to Canada are the Mississippi River. I didn't know that before. That's why the state lines are so crooked and angled and everything else. That's the river that's running all the way through our country, but it also continues in Canada. So if it's going to split America in half, what's it going to do to Canada? And is it going to just like break at some point? And, you know, but all of these were lies, but it went through over two. I said, it's going to go over two crosses, and both of those are crosses. And it's going to be over crosses, and God's going to confirm all of this. Nobody knew about the 23, and I couldn't even find the 23. But since I said this in November 22, and we didn't have a reawaken in December, I quickly had a friend put this map together. And what was amazing is how many cities that reawaken had been in. In fact, it was 17 locations with these three eclipses. Isn't that amazing?
It is.
And then General Flynn said when they did the one in San Antonio, that's near the Kerrville Cross down in the right above the Gulf on both of those, he said there were 35 contracts before they had the final location for that event, and that is 5 sevens. Do you see what I mean? And so we were talking about all this, and when they got this, because nobody knew about 23, and nobody was talking about 24 except that X that is a cross. And so what Father did, this is the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and it's the modernized Hebrew, which is a slanted A. And that Aleph, that letter, means his name, the Lord over all. Whether people want him or not, he's over all. He's not in control of all. Only Satan will control you. He's in charge of all. And so when he's done with them, he's done with them. And that's what he proved in Sodom and Gomorrah. That's what he proved in Nineveh. In Assyria, Assyria is no more. They took our 10 tribes of the Israel in the north. They took them captive in 721 BC. By 712 BC, so 9 years later, they ended up, God ended up sending Jonah. In 40 days, they had to repent, and they did. So God relented. And then 100 years later, Nahum went, and God was done. He took the tribes out, lifted up the water of the Atlantic Ocean, lifted up the water from the mouth of the Euphrates all the way across, and they walked on dry land for a year and a half. That's in the Apocrypha. And so what we're witnessing right now, this is God's land. In the middle of Jerusalem is USA. In the Promised Land, he gave all of those tribes, because think how big they were. Jacob turned into Israel in 1906 BC. 2,000 years before Christ. So as you look at all of what's happening and how Father did this, and then the 6 cities of Nineveh that Nahum said, you're done. And the Father said, you aren't going to know where my tribes are. And that's why they're called the lost tribes to this day. But we didn't know any of this truth. So when you look at what he did for us and gave us all of this truth, and only he is truth in life. So if you don't have truth in you, you're not his. Because only he does the breath of life. So if you're accepting from everywhere else in the world, and the world is that important to you, you're not part of what's happening. And that's why how many times has the president and the team said, the ending is not for everyone? Is because in a night, Noah took off. After 100 years of saying the truth, nobody else was even on the boat except his own family. And they didn't come on till the last 7 days. Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot knew the night before. He went to his daughter's husbands and said, this is it. And they knew the angels were at the house. And everyone in the community heard there were strange people there. maybe his son-in-laws were saying all of this, but they didn't want to leave the pub because they were comfortable with their family or their friends. And so they didn't even leave. But then Lot's wife doubted, and she turned into a pillar of salt. So it's only Lot and his $2 who got out of there. And so when you think about all that he's done to give us this message and to tell us, I'm with you, don't do what they did in Nineveh. And that's what the pilgrims said. They banned the Gentile worship and feasts and festivals of the other kingdom. They knew what it did. It groomed their children. The fathers were boiled in oil when they taught the children English for the Lord's Prayer, after Tyndale translated. So in 1535 was the Bible in English. 1582 was the Gregorian calendar. And I didn't know until the new book, and when he had me do the personal letter after the book was done. And in the personal letter, he had me go through that, and every name of a month and every name of a day of the week is one of their gods. I didn't know. I just knew that Constantine made a declaration to the venerable day of the sun, all shall worship on the Sunday, because he worshiped the sun god, and he merged all of the believers in with that, and they call it Christianity, and it has nothing to do with Christ. So the president calling us to a day of prayer and repentance and recovenant, because they made a covenant to the Lord and dedicated this land to the Lord. So our president is the first president to call all of us to prayer and repentance and to rededicate America to the Lord, because it's the Lord's intervention that's going to handle this. He handled Sodom and Gomorrah in one night. He handled the Canaanites and everyone in the world but Noah's family, and only Noah was the righteous one. But God let his family leave with him, and that was it. And in a night, it all changed after 100 years of saying the truth. So when people say, a lot of people aren't awake yet, it's not up to us to wake people up and to keep wondering how many are awake. Our job is, there's corporations over every little part of our country. President Trump and the military aren't going to be able to come in and clean up all your little things in your town and straighten them out and have people operating in integrity with your budgets. That's why I've been talking about this. And Bill and I have been going back and forth on this about villages and towns and cities and counties. We got a lot of cleanup to do. And we're focused too much on. And all my questions I get are, when do you think this is going to be over, Sheila? And when do you think that everything's going to revalue? And when do you think
when we make it over?
And there's nothing we can do about any of that. Why are we even talking about that? Because that is going to get handled. And the people at the top around the president, not the people but the 5, 6, 7 that are right tight with him, they all knew what covfefe meant the night he said that. And the reason he said it at a little after midnight on the East Coast is so we could have a 2-day holiday. There's no 2-day holiday for anybody in the world. And that's why each year he goes, I hope you'll have a great covfefe holiday, because it's May 30 and 31, because it was 9:05 on the West Coast and 12:05 in the morning on the East Coast. He's just brilliant what he does. And he's giving us all sorts of codes and signals and everything else I got this. You guys do what you got to do. I got this, I think we all feel freer that we could do more things, but we're not. And I don't know why.
You mentioned Nineveh just a couple of minutes ago. I wanted to make sure that we knew that one point on this map too. There's how many different Ninevehs that one of these lines crosses? Is it 6? Is it more?
Yes, it's 6. The 2024 crossed it, and somebody got mad at me on Twitter and said there were 7. You're not counting Nova Scotia. Well, Nova Scotia is not America. This is an American message, because the other nations don't have the depth of belief that we have in America. We just have to stand up in our faith, start realizing who's united with us in faith and truth, who's a believer, start uniting together and getting the job done so we can operate in the Lord's currency, because it never mattered what the world's currency was. And it's always going to collapse. It's always going to change. It's always going to let us down. But the Father never will. He'll never leave you or forsake you. And his currency is not about money. Tithing was never about money. If you had excess, the tithe, if you had 10 calves and now you had an 11th, you bring a calf. And same with chickens, and same with sheep, and same with eggs, and same with, where's your increase in your life? And look at it, after the first 3 years of fellowshipping together, it was about the increase, because then you're focused on how Father's blessing you. You're bringing the increase, so you're bringing a blessing, but what else? You're bringing a testimony. Do you hear testimonies today, even in America? Not very many. And I've got several each day.
Right. I hope we're getting better. I hope that as we move toward May 17th and the rededication day, that more of that will be done. More people will be prepared and able to speak out and add their voice to the testimonies of others. I think I'm sensing that we're getting there, but to your point, it is slower than I would like to see. And
but there's a lot of quiet people. There's a lot of people at home that are ready to go. They've had relatives killed for speaking the truth, and they're just holding back. They've had their families destroyed because of speaking the truth or communicating the truth. Because people that are not with the Father don't want what you've got. And so we got to let them go. Father, I used to try and I wanted everybody to understand, everybody to get through, and everybody's soul to be whole. I wanted it. You know what I mean? And Father said, Sheila, if it takes 1,000 people, you could be number 575, you could be number 999, and you're still not going to see it. You've got to keep walking. You've got to keep talking the truth. You've got to keep telling the people, because there is something in the scripture that says there will be a generation that does not taste death. Can you imagine? Because he brought Moses, and Moses walked away with him. He took Elijah. Everything about him is perfected. On Sivan 6, he gave the 10 commandments to Moses. On Sivan 6, he sent the Holy Spirit. Do you see the connection? On Nisan 14, he had them put the blood of the lamb over the post, the doorpost. Okay. On Nisan 14 is when Christ was on the cross. Do you see the connection? The blood of the lamb. And then 3 days later, on Nisan 17, was resurrection. So when he asked me about the new book coming out, I thought it was going to be 24 until Trump started putting everything out on social media. And when I got to capture this, so I had to do a new copyright in 25. So it didn't come out till 25. And he said, so when would you like the book to come out? And I said, resurrection would be fun, because it's resurrection for America, for our souls, because it's to save souls, save America, save the world. So I said, okay, if it could be Resurrection Day, and it tried to come out on April 12, then 11, then 13, 14, all these dates, and it didn't get finalized and absolutely released until April 15, which is Nisan 17 on the Hebrew calendar last year.
Isn't that interesting? And there it is. And this is your new hardback version of the book, yes? I understand people are very interested in obtaining this. Why don't you take just a moment, make sure they know how. And let me also show the website is a great place to go to get information. But then if you could make sure people know how to get the hardback, and if they would like to get a signed copy, there's a way for you to arrange that for them.
And all of those links right now, the interviews thing below my, all this has been changed in the last week, where it says interviews right below what you just showed. We moved all that down, and it's interviews by topic. So we've got Christmas is the oldest, and we've got the Georgia Guidestones, and then we've got the Faith and Soldier Monument. So this has changed, but right below the introduction video is the sign up. You can click to get the hardback on Amazon, because it's available on Amazon to be available globally, because otherwise I'd have to order like 15,000 at a time. Not going to do that, because that's not what I do. My focus is get the word out to you guys and then make the information available. So the hardback to Amazon is there for the $35, the paperback for $30. You can go to Amazon, but it's on our website, and it's also ebook on the website, and it's ebook and Kindle on Amazon. That's the paperback version. And then you click for hardback autograph, you click, and it'll take you right to Cornerstone. And when you donate $60, it'll say right on there, when you donate $60 and you click and you go right to Cornerstone, because then they know that the $60 is for the book, and then everything will get processed. The book will be ordered for you off of Amazon for you, and then we will get it autographed. I'll make sure that happens, and then we'll get it packaged and then shipped out to you.
That's great. Well, thank you again for being available with your time this week. Can we plan on next week, or do you know yet?
I think we can do that.
That's great.
Because can you believe we're already in March?
Almost. All right. So
Thursday should work.
That's great. And I'm sure people will be excited to hear more. And I bet we will see more between now and then too. Thank you again so much for your time, Sheila.
And bless you.
Bless you.